You suffer not because you're foolish, nor because you're weak, nor because the world is cruel for no reason. You suffer because you're nice. Because somewhere along the line, you were taught that if you were agreeable, gentle, soft-spoken, forgiving, the world would grant you peace in return. You believed niceness was a shield, that if you kept the edges of yourself smooth and harmless, no one would want to cut you. But the world you live in isn't a garden tended by kindness. It's a battlefield patrolled by predators who scan for softness. And niceness, in such a world, is not protection. It's a beacon. It signals that you're open terrain, easy to cross, easy to conquer. And so you suffer. Niceness is praised in fairy tales and sermons, but in reality, it has a dark side no one warns you about. It can become the very reason you're overlooked, disrespected, exploited, left behind. Because in a world ruled by dominance, optics, and hidden agendas, niceness without boundaries is interpreted as submission. It whispers to people that they can take more from you than you're offering, that you'll tolerate their disrespect, that you'll keep giving even when they stop returning the favor. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He studied the rise and fall of kings and saw that power was never toppled by pure evil. It was toppled by misplaced goodness. He watched rulers who forgave too quickly, who showed mercy without calculation, who tried to lead through affection alone, only to find themselves betrayed by the very people they protected. He knew that niceness, when unguarded, becomes a liability, because kindness without strategy is surrender disguised as virtue. You've been told all your life to be nice, be polite, be patient, be generous. But they forgot to tell you the price of endless generosity. They forgot to tell you that every act of niceness is a signal. And in a world built on dominance and competition, signals are read one way, as weakness. Look back at your own life. How many times have you softened your voice to avoid making someone uncomfortable? How many times have you quieted your needs because you didn't want to seem demanding? How many times have you swallowed your anger, plastered on a smile, and hoped that being nice would earn you loyalty, respect, love? And what did you get instead? Indifference, distance, exploitation. Because niceness without power doesn't generate gratitude. It generates expectation. People don't admire kindness unless it comes from someone they also fear losing. People don't respect empathy unless it's delivered from a position of strength. People don't follow nice leaders. They follow leaders who appear untouchable, leaders who choose to be kind sparingly as a deliberate act of power. Your niceness, if it flows endlessly, becomes cheap. And anything cheap becomes disposable. You become the person people call only when they need something. You become the emotional trash can, the one who listens to everyone's burdens but finds no one there when your own soul begins to crack. You become invisible because your presence requires no effort to maintain. You've made yourself too accessible. And in a world ruled by scarcity, what's freely given is never valued. That's the dark side of being nice. From birth, you were taught that niceness was your path to safety. Your parents said, be polite. Your teachers said, be respectful. Your culture told you, be the bigger person. And so you did. You bit your tongue when others insulted you. You forgave betrayals, hoping it would prove your goodness. You kept giving to people who had already shown they didn't deserve it. You kept hoping that if you poured enough warmth into the world, eventually the world would pour some back. But it didn't. Instead, it drained you dry. Because niceness, when given without boundaries, becomes a resource others feel entitled to consume. And the more you offer it without consequence, the more they expect. Until one day you realize you're running on fumes, exhausted, bitter, unseen. And still they ask for more. Here's the part no one tells you. People test niceness not to understand it, but to see if there's a consequence for crossing it. The more you forgive, the more they betray you. The more you give, the more they expect. It's not because they're evil. It's because human nature is wired to push limits, to extract as much as possible from any situation that feels safe and cost-free. You think that by being endlessly nice, you'll eventually be loved. But the truth is harsher. People don't love you for your niceness. They love you for the sense of value and mystery you create. They love you because your presence feels rare, because your kindness is a choice, not a reflex. And most importantly, because they know you have the strength to withdraw it. Niceness, when given automatically, becomes a pattern. And patterns become invisible. People don't notice what's always there. They stop valuing what's given freely. They stop respecting what never comes with boundaries. You may believe that your consistent kindness proves your character, but the world reads it differently. It reads it as desperation. Machiavelli saw this clearly. He believed the world rewards appearances, not intentions. You can be a saint on the inside, but if you don't appear powerful, the world will treat you like you're expendable. Because goodness, without presence, without mystique, without the capacity for force, is invisible. People don't fear losing what's always available. And people never respect what they don't fear losing. This is the brutal twist. The more you try to prove you're good, the more people test you. Because they suspect there's no cost to pushing you. They see your niceness as a lack of boundaries, as a willingness to absorb discomfort so they don't have to feel it themselves. And so they keep taking. They keep pressing. They keep raising the bar of what they expect you to tolerate. Until eventually you break. You want to believe that people are good. That if you show enough kindness, it will inspire others to do the same. But Machiavelli would tell you that people don't change because you love them harder. People change only when they fear they might lose you. Not because they're monsters, but because fear creates value. Absence creates weight. Scarcity transforms kindness from a cheap commodity into something precious. Look around your own life. Who suffers the most in families, friendships, workplaces, and even empires? It's never the cruel. It's never the cold. It's always the one who cares too much and expects too little in return. The soft are sacrificed first. Not because they're wrong, but because they're easy. Easy to manipulate. Easy to blame. Easy to leave behind. And when they finally collapse from exhaustion, no one understands. People ask, what happened to them? They used to be so nice. But no one ever asks what they went through to stop being nice. So what's the solution? Is it to become cruel? To turn your back on kindness entirely? But Machiavelli wasn't heartless. He was clear-eyed. He saw that in order to do good, you must first place yourself in a position where your goodness has weight. And weight comes from presence, from boundaries, from the quiet implication that your kindness is a choice, not a compulsion. It means learning to hold silence, to speak less, to reveal less of yourself. Because silence is power. Silence creates mystery. It makes people pause and wonder what's hidden behind your calm eyes. When you stop rushing to fill the spaces between words, people lean forward. They question themselves. They replay their conversations with you in their mind, wondering if they overstepped. Silence forces people to respect the edges of you they cannot see. Silence is not absence. Silence is precision. It's how you create space for fear, build mystique, shift the power dynamic without ever raising your voice. When you stop offering your words freely, when you stop explaining your every thought and feeling, you become larger than life in the eyes of others. People project their own fears and hopes into that silence. And in that projection, you gain power. Because the loudest person in the room is rarely the one in control. It's the one who waits to speak. The one who watches everything but reveals nothing. That is the strategist. That is the Machiavellian. And that is who you must become if you wish to remain kind without being devoured. Machiavelli would whisper in your ear, even the sun becomes ordinary if it never sets. Your kindness is not being ignored because it lacks quality. It's being ignored because it's too available. You show up when they don't show up for you. You initiate conversations. You check in on them when they've gone silent. You forgive slights without ever demanding change. And so they expect it. They begin to feel entitled to your endless giving. They consume your effort without gratitude. But let them disappear for a moment. Let them withdraw their warmth, even slightly, and suddenly, everything shifts. Your silence becomes louder than any words. Your absence becomes a presence in itself. That is the art of tactical withdrawal. Not vanishing so they'll miss you out of affection, but withdrawing so your value recalibrates in their minds. Machiavelli didn't believe love kept rulers safe. He believed the fear of loss was more reliable. People don't stay loyal out of affection alone. They stay loyal because they fear losing access, protection, status, or the privileges your presence provides. That's where most nice people fail. They try to keep others close through warmth, forgiveness, and constant acts of service. But the truth is this: people don't change because you love them harder. They change when they fear losing you. That isn't cruelty. That's clarity. Stop trying to convince people to see your worth. Stop over-explaining yourself. Stop offering your kindness as proof that you deserve a seat at the table. Instead, become the kind of presence that hurts to lose. Become the one whose silence echoes in their minds long after the conversation ends. Absence is not passive. It is one of the most active weapons in the strategist's arsenal. It creates space for reflection. It forces people to reconsider how they treated you. It transforms your presence from an expectation into an event. Think of every person who hurt you and then became accustomed to your forgiveness. Now imagine if, instead of forgiving them one more time, you'd gone silent. No explanation. No dramatic goodbye. Just distance. Machiavelli would applaud you. Because in silence, you shift the burden of interpretation onto them. You become a mystery they cannot solve. And humans are wired to chase what they do not understand. This is the paradox you must accept. Your kindness should be wrapped in barbed wire. Beautiful to behold. Painful to misuse. Because only then will people approach you with reverence instead of entitlement. Niceness without boundaries invites parasites. Niceness surrounded by strength creates kings. Machiavelli's greatest insight wasn't that cruelty works. It was that kindness only works when backed by the capacity for cruelty. Let them see your generosity. Let them feel your warmth. But let them never forget that beneath it all stands someone who can walk away and never look back. Your suffering comes because you're still trying to be who they used to like. The version of you that said yes to everything. The one who never demanded clarity. The one who kept showing up, hoping that this time they'd finally see your worth. But that version of you has to die. Not because it was wrong, but because it was killing you. Machiavelli would say that for a man to rise, he must become new in the eyes of others, even if he was once noble. And that is your next move. You don't explain the shift. You embody it. Let the world wonder, what happened to him? Why is he colder now? Why doesn't he need me anymore? You don't answer those questions. You let your new silence speak louder than your old kindness ever did. Because every relationship, every interaction, every conversation is a battle of frames. Will your needs lead or theirs? Will you be the one reacting or the one setting the pace? Will you beg to be seen or force them to watch in silence? Kind people often lose, not because they're wrong, but because they allow their emotional frame to be dictated by others. They react. They over-explain. They try to win love instead of command respect. But Machiavelli's students do not react. They observe. They reposition. And when the frame is fully theirs, they can be kind again. Because now it comes from control, not desperation. Most people don't realize they've been emotionally enslaved their entire lives. They seek approval as if it's oxygen. They sacrifice their time, their energy, their boundaries, all so they can be perceived as good. They stay silent to avoid judgment. They forgive quickly to avoid abandonment. But Machiavelli's world was brutal and honest. He didn't waste time trying to be liked. He spent his time understanding how power works. How humans behave when no one is watching. How even kindness can be used as leverage, not just as virtue. That's your transformation. You stop being someone who reacts. You start being someone who chooses. You choose when to give. You choose when to detach. You choose when to disappear. And most importantly, you choose yourself. Every time. In the Machiavellian playbook, your reputation is one of your most powerful weapons. Not your actions. Not your words. But your perceived essence. Once you were the nice guy. The soft one. The one who was understanding. The one they assumed would always be there. But now, you must become someone they speak about differently. Don't mess with him. He doesn't give second chances. He used to care more. Now he walks away like nothing. He helped me once, and never again. That's not cruelty. That's clarity. When your name begins to carry weight, you don't need to prove anything. The room adjusts to your presence. Because your absence has already done the talking. Every time you let it slide, every time you respond with kindness after being disrespected, every time you show up despite being ignored, you teach people something dangerous. You teach them, this is what I accept. This is what I deserve. This is how I want to be treated. Machiavelli would laugh at the idea of waiting for people to realize your worth. He'd say, make it costly to disrespect you. I'm priceless. Your energy, protected. Your kindness, reserved for the deserving. Because once people know you have standards, they will either rise to meet them or flee from the pressure. Either way, you win. Let's be clear, your kindness is not the enemy. Your lack of boundaries was. You were never too nice. You were untrained in how power works. You were raised to believe niceness wins. But in Machiavelli's world, the same world we still live in, niceness only wins when it's protected by discipline, silence, scarcity, and presence. So no, don't stop being nice. But stop being nice to be liked. Stop being nice by default. Stop being nice without strategy. The strongest kindness is not soft. It is unshakable. It is kind and still walks away. It is kind and still enforces consequences. It is kind and still makes people wonder who they're dealing with. This is where you arrive. The version of yourself that no longer gives out of guilt, but gives from choice. The kind of person whose warmth means something because it's no longer a reflex. It's no longer an addiction. It's no longer a survival strategy. Your niceness now has an edge. It's deliberate. It's rare. It makes people question their own worth when you offer it. That is how niceness becomes power. When it's reserved. When it's strategic. When it makes people ask themselves, what did I do to deserve this? And how do I make sure I never lose it? Machiavelli would tell you, use your niceness not as a message, but as a test. Watch how people respond to your boundaries. See if they value what they don't get easily. See whether they elevate or merely extract. Because now your niceness is a threshold. Only those who earn it should be allowed to experience it. And once they lose it, they remember it forever. You no longer punish people for failing to appreciate you. You simply remove yourself quietly, strategically, without fanfare. You disappear like a shadow at dusk, leaving only questions in your wake. That's not cruelty. That's selection. Because not everyone deserves your warmth. Not everyone deserves your presence. Not everyone deserves to consume the parts of you that cost you time, energy, and fragments of your soul. The final level of niceness is not to be feared. It's not even to be loved. It's to become an environment. To become someone whose mere presence alters the emotional climate in any room. When people are around you, they act better. They think sharper. They hesitate before lying. They speak with respect. Not because you demanded it, but because your presence makes disrespect feel unnatural. You don't need to assert dominance. You are dominance. You don't raise your voice. You raise your standards. You don't chase loyalty. Loyalty stabilizes around you like gravity. There will be people who remember you as too nice. And later, they'll remember you as gone. They'll replay the times you gave. The silence that followed. The moment they realized you weren't coming back. And they'll change, but not for you. For the next person who reminds them of you. Machiavelli understood the deepest truth of human nature. People only value what they can no longer reach. So let your absence teach what your words never could. Because sometimes the most powerful statement is the one you never speak. Sometimes the most transformative kindness is the one you withhold. This entire journey isn't about killing your niceness. It's about killing your cowardice. That part of you that said yes out of fear. That stayed silent to avoid rejection. That gave without checking the cost. That forgave because it was easier than confronting. That part of you has to die. Because it was killing you. In its place stands someone new. Someone who still loves, but does so from power, not weakness. Who still gives, but only when it reinforces his kingdom. Who still shows mercy, but never forgets the sword beneath the robe. You are not cruel. You are not cold. You are not heartless. You are simply done suffering for being nice in the wrong direction. From now on, your niceness will be your strategy. Your silence will be your sword. Your presence will be your empire. Let them wonder how you became untouchable. Let them fear losing your grace. Let them know, deep down, that your niceness is both a blessing and a warning. You once thought niceness would protect you, that it would shield you from betrayal, loneliness, disappointment. You thought that if you were agreeable enough, you could avoid conflict altogether. But conflict doesn't vanish because you're nice. It only goes underground. It festers in the silence you keep. It grows behind the polite smiles and the half-swallowed truths, until one day it explodes and leaves you wondering how things got so bad. You avoid confrontation, but confrontation doesn't avoid you. It waits behind your silence, gathering momentum. It waits for the moment you're too tired to keep pretending. And when it finally erupts, the people around you act shocked. What happened to him? He was always so nice. They don't realize you've been eroding inside for years, that your kindness was costing you more than they ever knew. Humans are wired to test limits. They test your silence. They test your patience. They test your niceness. Not because they're curious about your heart, but to see if there's a consequence. And when there isn't, the testing becomes habit. Your suffering becomes their routine. You become the person they vent to, but never listen to. The one they expect things from, but never check if you're okay. The one who gives without being remembered. And worst of all, you become resentful. Quietly, bit by bit. You smile, but inside, a storm grows. And that resentment doesn't stay contained forever. Because nice people don't stay nice, they just break. And when they break, it's either in silence or in fire. They ghost everyone. They vanish from friendships and families. They walk away from jobs without a word. They burn bridges they once worked so hard to build. Not because they were evil, but because they allowed everyone else's needs to replace their own for far too long. But Machiavelli would never blame you for becoming cold. He'd blame you for not becoming strategic. He'd say, the world does not reject niceness. The world rejects unarmed niceness. The most powerful kindness comes from someone capable of cruelty, but who chooses not to wield it. That's when people pause. That's when they wonder, what does he gain from being nice to me? What would it cost me to betray him? Kindness backed by power is unnerving. It creates mystery. It makes people tread carefully because they don't know what lies behind your smile. That is Machiavellian niceness. Strategic. Controlled. Rare. There's a reason kings sat on thrones, elevated, distant, untouchable. Because accessibility kills authority. And the nice are often the most accessible. You reply first. You forgive first. You offer help first. You show up first. And then you wonder why no one values your presence. It's not because they're blind. It's because you've removed all friction. And humans only value what comes with cost. Machiavelli would say, if you want to be valued, you must first become inconvenient to disrespect. You must teach people that access to you is not a right, it's a privilege. And that privilege comes with a cost. Not all niceness is good. Some of it is cowardice in disguise. You don't want to say no. You don't want to make people uncomfortable. You don't want to look selfish. So instead, you harm yourself quietly over and over again. You burn out for others. You keep the peace at the expense of your own sanity. You pretend everything is fine while inside you're exhausted, bitter, unseen. Here's the Machiavellian truth. Every act of niceness that isn't conscious is a form of self-betrayal. You give more than you should to people who never asked for it, to people who expect it and then resent you when you finally stop. You end up blaming them for not appreciating you. But the truth is, they didn't force you. You volunteered. And in Machiavelli's world, volunteers are exploited first. Machiavelli never said, don't be nice. He said, control it. Niceness should be like currency, spent only when there's a return or when it strengthens your position. Here's how the powerful use niceness. They give when it creates loyalty. They show mercy when it solidifies fear. They support others when it expands their influence. But when niceness becomes a pattern, a personality trait, a compulsion, it loses all leverage. That's the shift you must make. Niceness should never be your default. It should be your strategy. Because niceness without timing is just emotional exposure. You've noticed this before. You're nice to someone. You go out of your way to help them. You think you've done something memorable, something that will bond them to you. But the next day, they treat you no differently. Or worse, they seem colder, more entitled, as if they expect even more. But because you broke the first rule of power, what is freely given is never truly valued. And if you keep giving it, it's not merely undervalued, it's abused. People take from you not because they're evil, but because you trained them to. You taught them your time doesn't cost. You showed them your energy has no boundaries. You proved to them that their inconsistency would always be met with your consistency. And now they're addicted, not to your niceness, but to your lack of standards.